Hey guys, hoping all is well. So in this video we are going to be reading the finale of The Secret Zoo, Riddles and Danger by Brian Chick. So last time that we finished off, we ended chapter 42, and as we kind of recall, things are getting kind of pretty intense here. There's a lot of Sasquatches and now Noah is in a situation where he's face to face with crocodiles with nowhere to go, and Paji went back to the Action Scouts and they saw that Noah wasn't with them, so something is definitely amiss according to the Action Scouts and the Descenders. So we're going to be beginning with chapter 43 today, and as always guys, please feel free to follow along, and I hope you really enjoy the finale and apex of this story. Chapter 43, Collateral Magic. Noah was picked up by the alligator and whipped from side to side. He felt its tongue shift and roll, and heat radiate from its throat. He realized something. Though his torso was being squeezed, he couldn't feel any pain. He glanced down and saw he was wrapped in the curtain. After stripping it from the rod, he'd become entangled in it. Now, somehow, its magic was protecting him from being mangled to pieces. The alligator knew nothing of this. It continued to thrash Noah about, trying to snap his spine. One of the alligator's dark eyes was inches from Noah's face. The size of a golf ball, it blinked once, twice. It was watching Noah, waiting to see if the life escaped him. Beside them, the Sasquatch swiped mud from his eyes and growled. It prowled toward Noah, ready to strike. As the alligator snapped its head around, Noah swept his legs beneath the Sasquatch's feet, dropping it back to the ground. Knowing he had to do something, Noah threw a desperate punch against the alligator's fleshy throat. Its jaws opened, and Noah fell to the ground and rolled aside, shedding the curtain in the process. He jumped to his feet, and the alligator lurched forward and snapped at him, just missing. Noah sidestepped so the alligator stood behind him and the Sasquatch. The Sasquatch climbed to one knee, its back turned to Noah. Noah saw an opportunity. He snatched up the curtain in one hand and ran across the alligator's back. He pinched his arm around, and the curtain opened like a parachute and touched down on the Sasquatch, covering its top half. Then he jumped onto the monster's back and coiled his arms around its neck, cinching the velvet cloth over its head. The Sasquatch lurched forward, blind and confused. It smashed against the wall, crumbling bricks. Noah stared up the tunnel. Close to 200 feet ahead, he saw the end of it, a point of light shimmering in the waterfall. As many as 15 alligators separated him from the exit. Noah cupped his mouth around the monster's ear. Rawr! The Sasquatch spun around, trying to pinpoint the source of the noise. Rawr! The Sasquatch, still crouched, took off running up the tunnel, feeling its way with outstretched arms. It banged against the walls and splashed mud up the bricks. It stepped on alligators, driving their snouts and stomachs to the ground. Noah held on and bounced about, his world blurring back and forth. The spot of light grew bigger and brighter. The vague spill of the waterfall became beaded streams. Hissing alligators snapped at the Sasquatch's feet, some diving against the walls to avoid being trampled. Through the wavering lens of the waterfall, Noah began to make out the shapes of people, Tank and Blizzard and Little Bighorn. Somehow they'd been pulled into the melee. Above them flew a mass of tiny round birds, chickadees. The Sasquatch burst through the wall of water and carried Noah into the exhibit. It splashed through the shallow pool, then staggered into the hallway. Noah let go and thudded onto his back. He blinked his eyes dry and saw the Sasquatch throw off the velvet curtain, only to be covered again, this time with a net. Feathers rained down on him. Their slow, slicing movements reminded him of leaves falling in the City of Species. The other scouts rushed over and dropped to their knees beside him. "Noah!" Megan said. "Are you okay?" Too exhausted for words, Noah nodded. "The curtain! You got it!" "It's done." Noah stared into the eyes of his friends. It's over. The scouts collapsed across Noah, their arms draped over one another in a collective embrace. The chickadees netted the few remaining alligators, then flew down the hall. Tank flew over to Hannah and Solana. Together they watched the fourth friends hold one another. That's what gives them their strength, Tank said. What you're looking at right there is what makes them the scouts. A voice spoke behind them. He's absolutely right. The three crossers turned to see Mr. Darby. He stopped in front of the hole in the wall and now stood beside them, his purple trench coat flowing onto the ground. Chickadees were perched along his velvet shoulders. Mr. Darby touched Tank's shoulders. Their strength has its source in their love, and we'll need that strength in our battles, I assure you. Tank looked at the old man. He said nothing. I have no doubt. Their power is unique. If victory is ours to be had, it will be their love that helps deliver it. Tank remained silent. Just wait, Mr. Darby added with a smile. One day, Mr. Pangborn, you will see. One day, you will see. Chapter 44, The Cleanup and the Cover-Up. Sam and Tamarin were revived, and work began to clean up the mess. The chickadees left through the broken wall, headed toward the Forest of Flight and its hidden portal to the secret zoo. P-Dog led his coterie back to their exhibit. Mr. Darby informed everyone that order had been restored in the City of Species, the Sasquatches having fled back into random sectors. There had been damage to the city, but no word yet on casualties. Tank nodded. I'll call Red. Have him check on the lights. He touched his earpiece and said, Charlie, it's Tank. Can you ready with the lights? I don't know how much longer these flashlight fish can do their thing. He paused for Charlie's response, then added, Roger, we'll let you know when to throw the switch. Tank returned to the group. Mr. Darby, the scouts, the dissenters, Blizzard, Podgy, and Little Bighorn. He pointed down the hall to where alligators and Sasquatches wriggled in nets. What do we do with them? Ella said, The apes, from Metr-APE-olis. They're strong and coordinated. Trust me, I know. Maybe the apes could take them back to the secret zoo through Giraffic Jam. The exhibit's just around the corner. You guys must have a big truck, right? Have the apes load them onto a truck, and then someone drive them over to Giraffic Jam. A smile stole across Mr. Darby's face. The old man turned to the dissenters and said, You see, already they're thinking like crossers. Sam acknowledged this with a nod. I'll pull the apes, Tank said. On my way back, I'll pick up some wheels, and we'll need some constructors too. Though Noah had no idea what a constructor was, apparently Mr. Darby did. The old man nodded. Your walkie-talkie, Mr. Pangborn. I'll call Mr. Gordon on the south perimeter and have him gather a crew. Noah couldn't believe how prepared the secret society was. Tank unclipped his walkie-talkie and let it fly. Before it landed in Mr. Darby's hands, he turned and headed for Metr-APE-olis. Mr. Darby snagged the walkie-talkie out of the air and pressed its button. Mr. Gordon, are you there? A staticky voice arose from the speaker. Gordon here. Mr. Gordon, we need the services of constructors at Creepy Critters. Can you work on gathering a crew? Roger that. When do you need them? As soon as possible. Got it. Give me 10 minutes. A small burst of static sounded, and Mr. Gordon was gone. What are constructors? Ella asked. Mr. Darby peered down the hall. Oh, they fix things. For a while, there was nothing to do but wait. At one point, Marlowe appeared from nowhere and touched down on Noah's shoulder. At another, Blizzard padded up to the scouts and lovingly nudged Noah with his big head. Noah smiled and leaned into the bear, half disappearing into his deep white fur. Richie and Ella stood on either side of Little Bighorn, patting him. Megan waited beside Podgy. After 10 minutes had passed, Tank came through the busted wall leading a group of apes, as many as 20. The apes grunted and snorted and sniffed the air with upturned nostrils. A large truck backed its semi-trailer up against the building. In a cloud of exhaust, Tank jumped to the bumper and kicked a latch, opening the big rear door. He pulled out the loading ramp and dropped one end to the ground. "Okay," Tank said, "let's do this." The apes went to work. They moved in groups on alligators, not so gently dragging the nets across the floor and up the ramp. The scouts stood back and watched. The descenders gathered the smaller animals that had gotten out, crabs and snakes and frogs and turtles, and returned them to their tanks, where they promptly escaped into the hidden passages leading to the secret zoo. The descenders even collected the bugs they could find, beetles and spiders and anything else. As the groups worked, 4 men with huge backpacks walked up behind Mr. Darby. To get his attention, one man said, "Nice mess. Who made it?" Mr. Darby spun around and smiled. "I'm not certain whom to blame, but I can trust you can clean it up." The men scanned the area. Noah realized they were the Constructors Mr. Darby had referred to. "How much time we got?" "Can you beat the sun?" Mr. Darby asked. "Shouldn't be a problem. Most of the damage is superficial." Noah scanned the surroundings, the shattered aquariums, the mounds of debris, the busted tiles. He turned to Richie and mouthed, "Superficial?" Richie shrugged. Apparently the damage didn't seem superficial to him either. The Constructors walked down the hall and opened a door marked "Employees Only." They wheeled out a flatbed cart with a stack of thick glass panes. They pulled it down the hall and stopped at a spot that held the remains of at least 10 busted aquariums. They slipped off their backpacks and rummaged through the contents. To the scouts, Tank said, "Watch this." One man worked a pry bar to reshape the twisted frame of an aquarium. Another man used a sharp-bladed tool to clean the edges. A third man then lifted a plate of glass to the place where they were working, and a fourth man wiped a velvet towel across it. The magic moved a rectangular piece of the pane into the face of the aquarium. "Unbelievable," Megan muttered. "What's up with the velvet?" Ella asked Mr. Darby. "You grow it on a magic farm or something?" "Patience," said Mr. Darby. "You will learn about it in your cross-training. And ultimately, you will see." The Constructors proceeded to a second aquarium, then a third, a fourth, a fifth, each man performing a different task. Once they restored a full section of the wall, they hoisted their gear and wheeled the cart to a new area. The apes continued to gather the animals, and a half-hour later the truck was loaded. The floor of Creepy Critters looked strange in its new emptiness. Everyone congregated at the rear of the truck, and Tank pulled the trailer door closed. "Okay," he said, "me and the apes, we'll take care of the biz from here." Richie stepped forward. "Thanks, Tank. Thanks for being there, again." "No problem, little man." Tank extended his knuckles to Richie. "Give me one of these." Richie softly punched his small fist against Tank's huge one. Then, with a smile, he shook out his hand and mouthed, "Ow!" To the other scouts, Tank said, "And you guys?" The 3 friends stepped forward and took turns tapping fists with Tank's. "That's what I'm talking about." Tank winked. To Descenders, he said, "I'll see you guys back inside." He turned and whistled at the driver. The truck pulled out. Spewing a final cloud of smoke into Creepy Critters, Tank led the apes across the yard, where they walked along the slow-moving vehicle. As it turned, moonlight struck its side and revealed what was written across it bold letters. "Danger. Live animals." Richie said, "I bet that sign has never been more true." "I think not," Mr. Darby said with a smile. "And on that note, I also think it's time for our scouts to return home before someone's found missing from bed." "Yeah," said Noah. "I should probably close my window before my parents wake up and wonder where the draft is coming from." Sam walked over to Noah. He started to say something and stopped. His eyes shifted nervously. At last, he said, That was good. In the tunnel with the curtain. His mouth hung open while he searched for more words. Just know you did good. Noah's heart warmed. It was the first time a descender had congratulated him on anything. Hannah and Solana stepped up to Megan and Ella. Hannah said, "Nice job with that Sasquatch. If you hadn't jumped on that thing." "Not a problem," Ella said. "We girls have to look out for each other, right?" Hannah winked and popped a bubble. With their goodbyes complete, Mr. Darby said, "Blizzard and Little Bighorn, will the two of you kindly see that the scouts get safely to the front gates? We'll have Charlie keep the lights down until you return." The two animals lumbered over, and the scouts climbed onto their backs, the boys on Blizzard and the girls on Little Bighorn. As Noah situated himself in his normal front seat, he looked down at Podgy. "Podgy, I have to be honest. Those centipedes not only grossed me out, they scared me to death." Podgy tipped his bill beneath one flipper, a gesture of agreement. "Centipedes?" Richie asked. "What are you—" His face shifted. "Hey, speaking of centipedes, I got a really good joke." "What?" Noah gasped. "A joke. I got a joke about centipedes." Ella shot Richie a look. "If you even think of telling one of your dumb jokes right now—" "What?" Richie said. "You want me to save it for later?" Noah laughed and tapped the side of Blizzard's neck. "Come on, Blizz. Let's get out of here." Blizzard growled. Together the two animals charged down the hall in a magical glow of the flashlight fish. They reached the creepy core and headed on to the exit. They barreled through the busted doors and jumped down to the ground. Side by side, they stormed through the darkness, their paws and hooves stamping impressions into the snow. The scouts leaned forward and felt the cold breeze. Adrenaline coursed through them as another secret zoo adventure came to an end. As they neared the front gates, Noah raised his fist and cheered. The other scouts followed his lead. Chapter 45. The Two Men. While the scouts made their way to the front gates, two men stepped in Rhino-Rama. Because the lights hadn't been yet restored, everything was perfectly dark. They headed across the empty outdoor exhibit, their feet crunching the snow. They walked along a fake mountainside and arrived at Little Bighorn's cave. One man scanned the zoo grounds, reassuring himself that they hadn't been seen. He was tall and lanky, with a thatch of fire engine red hair. Charlie Red. With a sweep of his arm, he invited the other man into the cave. Draped in a black trench coat, the second man wore a fedora hat with a wide circular brim. As he ducked his head to enter the cave, he uttered a few words to Charlie. "Nicely done, Mr. Red." His voice was so gravelly and hoarse that he hardly sounded human. Something seemed wrong with his vocal cords, or his tongue, or his lungs, or all three. He sounded as if his fleshy insides were rotting. Charlie Red nodded. Then he stood by and watched as the Shadowess disappeared into the cave with a portal into the secret zoo. Minutes after leaving Rhino-Rama, Charlie Red opened the door to the main power facility for the Clarksville City Zoo, a small building near the entrance. Once inside, he unclipped his walkie-talkie and raised it to his lips. I'm at the front power station, confirming authorization to restore power." Mr. Darby's voice came through the speaker. "Charles, we're ready on this end. Please proceed." As Charlie Red used his flashlight to find the proper switches, Mr. Darby added, "Excellent emergency plan, Charles." The prairie dogs, the chickadees, everything worked perfectly. Even Blizzard and Little Bighorn arrived in time, and hiding the zoo in darkness was just outstanding. I think we can be confident that our actions were not spotted by outsiders, and we can be certain none of the Sasquatches escaped. Charlie located the switches and turned them on. "Thank you, sir. Tank and I are still working with the Constructors. Again, I applaud you. Everything worked according to your plan." The walkie-talkie went silent, and Charlie replaced it on his hip. He stepped outside and watched the lights blink across the landscape. Under his breath, he said, I know, old man. Everything is going exactly according to my plan. With that, Charlie Red closed the door and headed back to his post. And that is the end of the story of The Secret Zoo, Riddles in Danger by Brian Chick. I hope you guys enjoyed that third book in the series, and I will absolutely be continuing with the fourth one, which is entitled, I believe, Traps and Specters. Traps and Sectors. But I hope you guys enjoyed that story, and as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and please take good care of yourselves and be safe, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.